Welcome back, everybody. Canes Local, episode 72, coming to you midsummer following free agency. We're going to talk signings for the Canes, other needs going forward, and around the league coming up next. All right, guys. Well, let's dive into it. It's been a while since we've talked, so happy summer, I guess.
Happy 4th of July, everybody.
Yeah, happy 4th of July, everybody out there.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Good day
so
yesterday.
yeah, Canes were. It was really a strange thing. I heading into free agency, I wasn't sure exactly what the heck we were going to do, but the Wizard comes through again and puts us, I think, in a pretty good spot. So let's talk about the two-headed monster, the two big signings, I think, for the Canes. And I said to Cam yesterday, I think we got way better. We got bigger, we got faster. So I guess let's start with the one that happened first. Let's start with Keandre Miller.
Yeah, well, you know, I think this is going to be very similar, i.e., to a Brady Skjei situation where it really struggled in New York. I don't think he fits New York system well, and I really and this is, I guess, a little bit of a dig at New York as well too. But they don't develop their players very well. You see it. They've had the first overall pick. They've had the second overall pick. They've had so many top first round picks, and all those guys have been traded so far. So that tells me something. That tells me that you have an organization that cannot develop players at a proper level. So, with that being said, yeah, did Keandre Miller have a bad season last season? Yes, it was not good. But is he going to look different under the Canes organization? I genuinely think so. I think this is going to be a great fit. I think Keandre is one of those players that he can play in our system very easily because of how well he skates. We all thought that Brady Skjei was an unbelievable skater. Wait until Keandre Miller's skating, because I think Keandre Miller is an even better skater than Brady Skjei is. The one question mark I do have is can he open up a little bit more on the offensive front? I feel like that's something in a piece of his game that he has more to give than he was giving. But playing with, Adam Fox and playing with other offensive defensemen in New York, you kind of have to give up a little bit of that offense to try and play a 200-foot game in order to cover for those guys. I'm excited to see who he lines up with, but whoever he lines up with, I can't imagine it being, Shane Goss to spare to where he has to play that defensive gap again. I think he's going to get lined up with somebody that he's going to have a lot more offensive capabilities to run up the ice, move forward, move the puck up ice, and get those offensive chances.
Yeah, I like it a lot for sure. I mean, I didn't know how I felt about it the first day just because of how, like you said, how poor he played last season, but the Rangers team as a whole was horrible last season. Like everybody played bad. Shesterkin was bad, Panarin was bad, Zibanejad was bad. Literally, go down the list, everybody was bad. The only two players that the Rangers have really kind of developed have really been Shesterkin and, if you want to say, Lafreniere to an extent, but he hasn't. I mean, he had the season before last season. He looked like he had taken a step, and he looked like he was trending to actually be the guy, but he took steps back last year. So did everybody else. So it's going to be hard to judge anybody on that team from last year,
Yeah.
but overall, I think it's a good signing. I mean, you give up Morrow, which, yeah, it's disappointing, but like you said, at the end of the day, New York's got to develop him. So that's on the onus is on them now to develop him.
Yeah.
So what should happen and what I think will happen with him are two very different things. What should happen, he should play another year in the AHL. That's what I think. He should play another full season in the AHL, maybe a call up here and there, get some games in. What's really going to happen? He's probably going to get put third line minutes on the team, if not get bumped up at some point. He's going to get thrown into the fire, and they're going to have to see if he sinks or swims. I think that's probably what's going to end up happening with him. So
yeah, I think.
But overall, good for Miller.
Yeah, I know.
For
Overall, I love this. I love the acquisition. I think Keandre Miller's the thing I love about it. He's big. I mean, we got much bigger on the D side. I mean, 6'4", 6'5", and
5, yeah.
he
Same
just
size as Burns, but yeah.
yeah,
Mhm.
but younger, obviously. So I just like everything about it, and he wants to come here. I think that's the other thing too, that we didn't have a good feel about the Rantanen deal fiasco from last year. I mean, did he really want to come or not? But I think the two guys that signed here really wanted to be here, and I think that's a bigger deal than anybody can even imagine. I mean, so but to have a guy there, I think Cam and I talked about it a little bit yesterday. I think he slots in on his offside against with Slavin. I think that's where he slots in. To be determined, because I think Kyle, you and I talked. I don't think Nikishin's ready for 25, 26 minutes a night yet, and it's unfair to him. And maybe he is. I don't know,
Maybe
but
he is. Yeah.
yeah. So, but either way, one of those guys is gonna have to play their offside, and I think Cam made a real good point yesterday. I'd rather have Jacob Slavin on his more comfortable side, and allow the guy that's gonna be more the offensive player play on the offside, because some guys just prefer it. They don't mind it. And because and I'm not saying I'm a pro player, but I always preferred to play my offside, and I don't know why, but I always preferred to have my stick to the middle of the ice. And I don't know exactly why that was. Maybe it's because I was a shitty player, and I figured I could keep the puck out of the center of the ice better than if I had my stick already there. I'd have to think so hard. But I think he'll end up slotting in on his offside with one of the top two pairing.
Yeah, I that was going to be my biggest question mark, was where in the lineup does Keandre fit? I think you put him next to Jalen Chatfield, it's going to be a good fit. I think you put him next to Sean Walker, it's going to be a good fit. I think you put him next to Jacob Slavin, it's going to be a good fit. Um, in all reality, I think just based on the way Rod's going to run his board and run his system, he's going to only trust one guy to truly play his offside, and that's going to be Jacob Slavin. I would not be very surprised if you have Jacob Slavin playing the right side this upcoming season, and that's purely just
Mm-hmm.
because out of everybody who could do it, I mean, Slavin's going to do it and still be one of the best defensemen in the NHL. Like, there's going to be no gap in his game. We all know it. He's just the most true professional player I mean, arguably one of the most true professional players we've seen come through the organization outside of Rod. Just the way he carries himself. And I genuinely think that Slavin playing his offside is less damaging than possibly having another guy play his offside, but it remains to be seen, you know? I do know for a fact that Alexander Nikishin did play the right side quite a bit in the KHL. A lot of that has to do with the way the KHL typically lines their players up. They almost always do offhands. Depending on the team, some teams do left side, left or left-handed left side. Some guys, but a lot of the teams they do offhanded. And the one thing with Nikishin as well too is if you do put him on the offhand side, his shot is arguably
Mm-hmm.
better than 95% of the NHL's. So if we do line
Mm-hmm.
him up on that offside, which would probably be him playing with Jacob Slavin in that regard, all of a sudden that opens up a whole wheelhouse for him to just tee off on the one time side and generate a whole bunch more offensive opportunities. Um, but I still, is it just me, or I don't feel like the Canes are done with their defensive core? I still think we have a move in the locker that's going to bring somebody else in, and possibly move somebody else out. And the only reason I'm saying that is the way we have it lined up right now. I still think we're going to go out and try and get a right-handed shot defenseman. I just don't know what the price is going to be, and there's really not that many in the free agent market, so it's going to have to be done via trade. Um, does it happen? No, but do I think they're trying to get it done? I genuinely do. I think, and this is no knock against Shane Gostisbehere, but I think they're trying to move away from Gostisbehere, and his 2 more years left on his contract in order to solidify a right-handed shot defenseman.
Yeah.
But again, that remains to be seen. So
I don't know if does he have a no move clause or a no trade? Do you
I
know?
want to say it's a 15 team no move clause, but I'll look into it right now. I can I'll
Yeah.
pull it up.
Yeah, the other thing too
Um,
with Gosh Despair, I mean, again, I like the player, I really do, but he's a defensive liability a lot of times. So I mean, it limits you what you can do with Sean Walker, because I think Kyle and Cam, maybe Cam and you and I talked about it, but it limits what you can do with him because arguably I'd love to see Walker get top 4 minutes because I think he's earned it. I think he deserves it. The problem is you can't move him away from Gostisbehere because he's, other than Jacob Slavin, Cam, you and I talked about that. He's probably one of the most defensively responsible, one of the more defensively responsible in our lineup. So just moving him up and down that lineup, not giving us that flexibility. I think that where we need to put somebody that's got a better 200-foot game in that bottom six slotting on that side. I think and I don't disagree with you, Kyle. I think there's an opportunity out there that if there's one out there, I think they're going to take a look at it hard.
Yeah, so real quick, he does have a 15-team no trade clause. Don't know what 15 teams those are, but there is a trade clause in place. So it would have to be something done where he either has the
He'd have to
okay
waive
for
it.
one of
Yeah.
those 15
Yeah.
teams, or he gets traded to a team that's not on that no move clause. So it does limit the amount of teams we do have options to play with as far as a trade.
Yeah. And like I said, I'm assuming the teams that are on that trade list that are top 15 for him, like he would go there, are probably cup contenders or playoff contenders of some sort. So, you're getting what you would trade for would probably be somebody, pretty substantial, hopefully. So again, I mean, you honestly, you throw him at a team with, because again, we got a lot of forwards now. We got forward depth now.
We got wing depth, that's for sure.
We got we're very deep on the wing. So we'll see if they throw, him and a winger and maybe a draft pick for a right-handed shot defenseman. I don't know, depending on who it is. Obviously, it'd have to be somebody pretty substantial for them to do that. But I'm just trying to think of who they could go get. But either way, I mean, even if they don't get somebody, I think somebody steps up and ends up playing their offhand, which is good. I mean, I think having, especially with the way that the Canes play, I mean, I think even Miller said this, like when you're in the offensive zone, you'd rather be on your offside.
Yeah.
Because your forehand's to the middle of the ice.
Yeah.
So you can take the puck off the wall, take one step, and you can fire immediately, rather than having to do
4 or 5 steps to get a lane.
Pull it 4 or 5 back steps,
Yeah.
then to fire it, kind of blindly at the net. So, we'll see. I mean, I honestly think he could do well playing on his offhand. I just think he's so big that it's not that it's not going to make a difference, but as long as he learns how to do, the high flip, that's all that matters. If he can do the high flip out of his D zone on his backhand really well, we're good.
Yeah.
We won't have any issues with him.
I have a name that I'm going to throw out there, but we'll tailor this for after the secondary conversation. But I think now would be a good time. Let's push over to the second Great Dane the Carolina Hurricanes are now going to have on the team. Nikolaj Ehlers signs, in my opinion, a little bit of a team-friendly discount, as I'm seeing more and more reports that when he did sign this contract, there were multiple contracts with other teams that were bigger contracts than what Carolina was offering him, but he wanted to play in Carolina, which as a Hurricanes fan, God, that's refreshing to hear, isn't it? Somebody actually
It
wants
is.
to play here.
Yeah.
Holy shit. It's actually
he said he
nice
actually
to
wants
hear.
to live here. So
Yeah, he
You know?
said it's a beautiful place. He wants to live. I have a very strong feeling that because of World Championships this summer, the Danish team had to actually qualify for World Championships this summer too. So again, I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that I don't know if Freddie was around for the whole World Championships or pieces of it, but I know that they also had not World Cup, but Olympic qualifiers as well too this summer as well. So I think that Freddie was over there for pieces of that. You cannot tell me that, and I'm not saying it's tampering or I'm not saying anything like that, but if a guy asks you, what's it like living in Raleigh? I bet you $20 Freddie Anderson was like, I love it. Like compared to where he was in Toronto to now, he's probably night and day. He's like, it's warm. We can go golf whenever we want to. It's beautiful out there. Like there's not a ton of pressure from the outside. There's not a ton of noise. Like, yes, we are a growing fan base still. We're a growing organization still, and the pressure is going to continue to build the longer we get into these stretches where we're going, 8 years straight in the playoffs and making 3 cup finals. Yeah, the results haven't been there once we've gotten to the cup finals, but name another team in the past 8 years that's made 3 cup finals outside of the ones that have won the cup. It's been Tampa, who's won 2 cups, Florida, who's won 2 cups. What? Edmonton? So
Yep.
the only
Eastern
other
Conference
team
Finals,
is Edmonton. So it's like Carolina's in a really good spot. The pressure is going to continue to build, and it's going to get bigger and bigger the longer we have this success streak without winning a cup. But it's nothing compared to what the pressure is in Canada.
Yeah.
So I think Ehlers is going to get exactly what he wants. He's going to get a little bit of a quieter environment. I'm super excited to see him in Carolina because the big thing that he always had a gripe with in Winnipeg was he never really got the ice time that he felt like he deserved. I promise
like
you,
third line minutes or something.
yeah, so on average for the past 3 seasons, he has averaged third line minutes according to all of the analytical stats. So he's been somewhere between the 12-minute to 15-minute range for the past 3 seasons on average. I think some of that has to do with the fact that they're a little nervous to overplay him due to his injury history and the past of his injuries. But man, if you're telling me that a guy that's averaging 60 points with only playing 15 minutes a
Yep.
night gets to play 23 minutes
Yeah,
a night,
that's the big thing people don't get. People don't understand that is that
like,
he's producing the way he's producing at limited minutes. So give him 15, 18, 20 minutes a game.
think about how happy
Like,
we'd be if Jordan Stahl had 60 points in a season. We'd be over the
Exactly.
damn moon. We'd be
I know.
flipping.
exactly.
We'd be flipping
I
out.
think Ehlers is a really good signing, and I think early on we wanted him right away. I mean, we weren't one of these teams that jumped on the bandwagon because all these other guys came off the board, and I think that was a big part of it too. Is that we were early on, we were locked into his camp. I mean, we were probably one of the few teams that were in his kitchen, talking to him and making sure that he's
At
comfortable.
noon.
Yeah.
On
And we're
on
right.
free
I mean,
agency.
1 minute after we started, and I think that played a lot into his decision. Quite honestly, they wanted me right away with everybody else that was on the board. Not to say we weren't talking to those guys, but it really played a lot into that. They wanted me. These other teams only wanted me when those other guys were gone, and that was the concept. So, am I really valuable to them, or am I just a piece of the puzzle that they can only get now because everybody else is gone? So, I think there's a two fact. He wants to be here. We want him here, and I think it's an absolute perfect fit for the Hurricanes. I really do. He's fast. He's so fast. And to put him alongside Sebastian Aho and Seth Jarvis or whoever that top pairing looks like, I think that's going to be an exceptional first line coming forward in the next season.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely a big addition. I mean, and I understand. I've heard, other, pundits or whoever talking about it, and I do tend to agree with them, which is it's kind of more of what the Canes already have. It's just
More
a
of
better
the same.
version of what
Yeah.
the Canes already have. More of the same. I can't disagree with them. As much as I hate them, kind of, it's like, oh, finally somebody wants to sign here, but they're knocking it a bit because of, it's more of the same, which I understand. He's not a big guy. He's not a huge guy. I mean, he's, quick, speedy, 60-point guy. So, and the Canes have, quite a few of those at this point. So, I understand that, but at the same time, there's still all summer as well. So I genuinely think if the Canes can't get a reasonable deal done for a 2C, I think you either put Stankoven or Jarvis at 2C, let them run it, trade Kokoniemi and Gostisbehere somewhere and get a right-handed defenseman that's quality. That's what I would do. If I can't get a reasonable deal done for a 2C, even reasonable, even if you're going after, we've heard rumblings of Tage Thompson for a while as well, just talks with Buffalo. I mean, if they're ever willing to part with him, I mean, this Bowen Byram saga has been going on for, God, it feels like, a year now. Ever since they signed him, they've been wanting to trade him.
No, I know.
And it's like, Kevin Adams is just not, he's not a great GM. I love him as a Hurricane. Obviously, he was a great Hurricane, but as a GM, he ain't it. So it's crazy. But
let me give him a little bit of rope, and they are the number one team that teams put a no move clause on. So when he's going out to pick his harvest of the crop, there are very few and far between of guys that are even willing to sign if they're a UFA, let alone get traded there. Like if you have a no move clause, the number one team on your no move clause is the Buffalo Sabres. So
I think they're good at developing players.
they are. The
That's
issue is
that's the one thing I notice about them. I mean, you think of all the players that have moved on from there that have gone on to do, great things. I mean, Ullmark, Reinhart, Eichel, like it just you look at their team from what is it, 5 years ago? I mean, they were stacked.
they had a cup
And they still didn't make
champion
the
team.
playoffs.
Yeah.
And they still didn't make the playoffs. So it's just they're great at developing the players. They just don't have once they develop them, they don't have the structure in place at the top to actually proceed forward.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing for them.
I don't want to get
figure out the
too far
problem
off
with the
rails
Buffalo
on
Sabres.
Buffalo.
They got to figure that out, because I agree they're an absolute train wreck. I mean, they get good player after good player, and then they do nothing. It's unbelievable.
Can I tell you exactly what they do? They wait until they hit their max value, and they're still in a rebuild, and so they trade off all these players after they've done develop them, but they don't
Rather than
have
double
any of
down.
that veteran presence in their locker room. You're meaning to tell me that if you still have Ryan O'Reilly, granted Ryan O'Reilly, that trade was a while ago, but if you still have a veteran presence like Ryan O'Reilly, you keep a Sam Reinhart, and you keep a lot of these guys that they've gotten off from, if you just keep them, and yes, I understand some guys don't want to re-sign there, and a part of that is because you're not winning hockey games. But in order to win hockey games, you need some veteran presence in your locker room. You can't do it by having 25 guys under the age of 25 trying to hoist the. You need a little bit of that veteran presence. Look at when Carolina finally got back into the playoffs. Who were the big guys on the team? Jordan Stahl had a great year for us that year. Justin Williams signs with us halfway through the season, or he was with us the whole season, but has an unbelievably good year. Jacob Slavin was hitting the 27-year-old mark, where he was starting to, maybe a little earlier than that, but we had guys.
Earlier than that. He was like 20.
Well, he's 31 now, and it was 8 years ago.
No, he's 29, I thought.
No, he's 31 now. He's getting up there. That's the scary part.
Know.
That's the part I'm nervous about.
31.
He's getting a little older.
No, I do agree that the veteran presence is an issue, which is also why I think circling back to that with the Canes is they did get younger.
Yep.
They got a lot younger. They shed Burns, they shed Orlov, and they cut about, probably 2 or 3 years off the average age of the team, realistically. So they definitely got younger. So I still think adding another veteran guy, like a true, like a hardened vet. I honestly would have loved to see Corey Perry come and play in Carolina. As much as he gets a bad rep for making it to the Cup final and losing.
I was going to say, at least we'd make it to the Cup final.
At least we go to the Cup final.
At least we make it to the finals.
Yeah, like I think he would have been a really, really good pickup. Obviously, I don't think the Canes wanted to match what LA was going to give him. And he probably didn't want to come here. He's been on the West Coast his whole life, so I don't know if he would want to come really to the East Coast. I think he
tried. He tried. He was in Chicago for a cup of coffee, but
in Montreal,
he was.
Montreal, yeah, that's true.
Montreal went to the Cup final with them. Went to the Cup final with Tampa and lost. Yeah, so he's had his stints, and I don't think he loves it. He'd rather be on the West Coast. He's been there for most of his career. Yeah. So I'm just wondering,
biggest thing with that, and sorry to interrupt, but he still has his house that's in Huntington Beach, California. So that's where his family resides in the summertime. That's where they have basically grown up as well too. So I think a part of that is still, he wants to be in at least close enough to them to where they're not having, because these past couple of years, yes, your family's going to travel with you to an extent, but when you're moving every single year, we've heard it from multiple guys, typically the family can't, the wife, the kids, they don't want to move every single year to a new team and a new organization. So after the first couple, my presumption is the family has gone back to California and just kind of set up shop there, and he's been playing and then going home. They've been traveling to visit him when they can, but I have a feeling that they haven't been together for a significant amount of time, and that was part of the reason why he signed in LA. Now, I don't disagree. I think adding a piece like that would have been massive, but I still think there's pieces out there that could be added that could help us in that regard. But I think it's going to be through a trade, like you said.
Yeah, it's gonna have to be.
Yeah, a couple of the names that I kind of want to throw out there and get a feel for you guys. The few names that I've seen are Tage Thompson, Mason McTavish, which I'm very interested in because more and more that this drags on, the more and more it's sounding like he doesn't want to re-sign in Anaheim, which then opens up the door to where he can kind of not dictate where he wants to go, but in a way he can a little bit dictate where he wants to go because if a team's not going to be able to get a contract out of him, they're not going to sign, they're not going to trade for him. So
Yeah.
he's going to be able to kind of be like, oh, I want to sign with this team and I will sign with them long term.
Mhm.
The thing that a little nervous about Mason McTavish, he's not overly big. He's not an overly, he is, I think he's 6'1".
Kind of more of the same, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's a little bit more of the same, but what he brings to us is a legitimate second line center. Another name
Yeah.
that I have heard too, Dylan Larkin. I don't necessarily, I think we're going to have to give up a
That
big
one's a little
package in
tougher.
order to get him.
Yeah.
Not really the biggest fan of that idea. But yeah, I think Carolina needs to do something with the second line center. Now, granted, Jesperi Kotkaniemi is only 24 years old. Still has a lot of room to grow, in my opinion. Is he going to ever be that second line center? Maybe. I don't think so, but maybe. What I wouldn't mind doing is that if we don't want to move off of Jesperi Kotkaniemi because as of right now, his ticket is not really that bad. I mean, $4.5 million under the new salary cap era is a pretty nice deal, at least for a third line center. Especially looking at what like Tanner Jeannot just got $3.5 million, and he got 6 points last season. Like, yeah, if that's what the new contracts are going to be, I'm more hesitant to move off of Jesperi just due to the fact that I don't think Jordan Staal has more than a year or two left under in his tank. And you know who I think would be a perfect third line center? It's Jesperi Kotkaniemi. I
Yeah.
think he is
Yeah,
a
I think so
spitting
too.
image of Jordan Staal.
Yeah.
So if we can make a deal without offloading Jesperi, and now, granted, if the deal does revolve around offloading that contract and we need the money,
Yeah.
or Jesperi wants to go the other way, I get it. Or he wants to change of scenery, I get it. But if we can slot him into that third line center role and move Stahl down to the fourth line center role, where really Stahl's only game plan is like matchups and when we need matchups and then PK. Like those are the only two things Stahl is really focused on. Oh, man, we just get even deeper down the middle. Now, who, if anybody, is like the guy that you want? Like, I know Cam, I know you're Tage. I guess it's more Dad. Who is the guy that you like genuinely like? If you can go out and get any center in the country, who are you going to get outside of
Ye-
yes, McDavid, Draisaitl, those
Yeah,
guys?
no, I mean, I think, if it really depends on, I love Tage Thompson because of his age, his range, his size, the way he skates, the way he handles the puck. He's something different. He's not more the same for us. I think a guy like even I know he doesn't want to come back here, but a guy like Vinny Trocheck, I think he would be to come back into the lineup. I think he would add another piece to that second line that would, we've missed him ever since he's left, and
Yeah.
and I
Haven't
think
replaced him.
yeah, we had to do that. And then the other guy too that I think maybe is probably our best. We have our best chance at acquiring if we think he's an upgrade. Would be Jason Robertson. I think he would be one of those players that I think we have a legitimate shot at getting. I don't know that we have a legitimate shot at getting Tage Thompson without selling the farm to
Yeah.
get him. So I think Robertson, and I've heard an exchange between McTavish and Robertson, but I don't think McTavish wants to go. I don't know if he wants to go to Dallas or not go to Dallas. But I think I've heard that swap, kind of a 1-for-1 with a couple of, bags of pucks here and there. But I think who I want, I think getting a guy like Tage Thompson would make us a way better team.
I'd put money on the Canes win the cup. If we got Tage
Yeah.
Thompson, I'm putting a bet in today.
Yeah.
Like today. So that's how I look at it. At
as
least.
much
I mean,
as
there's obviously there's good options out there. for sure. It's just a matter of,
Mm-hmm.
and that's why it was, free agency this year has been so tough, is because guys are re-signing with teams because there's not many teams that are sellers.
Yeah, that's
Really. I
surprising,
mean,
right?
it's really just Pittsburgh is
Which,
pretty much it.
yeah,
Let's go,
especially
let's
with
go get
the
Sid. Let's go get
well,
Sid.
I
yes,
would love that.
he's not leaving. So
I know.
if
I don't think he is. Yeah.
That wasn't your question,
Not by
Kyle.
his own accord.
no, I know that it's who you would love to see, but I just one thing though is that I think another big reason, or sorry, I let me split my two thoughts that I got here because if not, I'm just going to make it confusing. A lot of teams aren't sellers, which is extremely surprising to me, especially when you
Mhm.
consider the first overall pick this year is going to be Gavin McKenna, who they're expecting to be like an IE. Now, granted,
Oh.
I don't want to compare the guys together, but generational talent like a McDavid or like a Crosby. Now, does he ever fulfill that expectation? I don't know. But last year
I think he's closer to Bedard,
I
but that's just me.
we say that, but also he put up way better numbers than Bedard did. He had a 54 game point streak in the W or the yeah, in the WHL I think he plays, or in the OHL. I forget where he plays, but he had a 53 game point streak where he put up 128 points in those 53 games. That is asinine. Like think about a kid putting up 120 points in 53
Is he
games.
big?
I want to say he's like 6 foot, 6'1". He's a little bigger than Bedard. He's a little bit more filled out than Bedard is
Okay.
already
Yeah,
currently.
if he's got the height, and if he's got the height, he'll be fine. The problem, Bedard's just small and he gets knocked off the puck.
He also has nobody
gets
else to
bullied.
play with. Who is he's
I
playing with Tyler
100% agree.
Bertuzzi and I love the guy to
No, I
death,
know.
but Teuvo Teravainen, who right as of now is probably a second line winger on most teams, if not maybe even a little further down the lineup on most teams. So he
Yeah.
doesn't have much to play with and a lot of help, which is really surprising. Like I thought Chicago would, and now granted, the UFA market has been just a joke. There hasn't really been anybody to add, but I thought they would at least have made an effort to try and at least go out and add a piece or two to get. And now granted, I think
Ooh,
they were
didn't do anything.
I think they were big in on a lot of guys, but this free agent market has been. I wouldn't be surprised if they offered Ehlers like 10 million, and that was
Yeah.
one of the teams that he got a lot more money from, and he just was like, I don't really want to go to a struggling organization. I bet you they were going to, if he would have made it to July 1st, they were going to throw 15 plus million at Mitch Marner. Like they were going
Yeah.
to do that. The issue is Mitch Marner never made it to July 1.
Mm-hmm.
So I think they were planning on doing so, but the market just hit the fan where everybody has money now, and the guys are signing for at least decent deals. Like I wouldn't be surprised if Chicago was big in on Marchand or Ekblad or Bennett if they would have hit the free agent market. But all three of those guys re-signed before the free agent market even hits the board. The only guy that was worth really a first line role was Nikolaj Ehlers that was really out on July
Yeah.
1st. I can't think of anybody
Maybe
else
Brock
that was.
Besser. That was about the only other one.
He didn't even hit July 1st though. That's the big. Oh, I
Yeah, I
guess
know.
He did.
Did he?
No, he did. He hit
Yeah.
free agency.
Yeah.
Yeah. He just ended up re-signing with
He
Vancouver.
just ended up re-signing
Which
with
is weird.
Vancouver. Yeah, I know.
I don't know
I
why.
know.
He, like,
Why would you
he
wait?
dropped it. You dropped, what, however much. He probably dropped $8 million to sign
Mm-hmm.
with. Maybe that was a Vancouver decision, but either way, he ended up re-signing
Again,
for a 7-year deal.
He probably got to free agency. It was a comparable contract to what he was going to get anywhere else as far as money is concerned, outside of going to a Chicago or going to like an Anaheim or a team that's not in the playoffs that's really struggled the past couple of years. So in his mind, he's like, I mean, the best chance I have of playing meaningful hockey is probably here in Vancouver because we're only 1 year removed of being in the playoffs. And,
Mhm.
with a full healthy lineup, they're a very capable team of making playoffs. I mean,
Yeah.
maybe that's a little bit of it, but that one was surprising to me as well, too, that he decided to up and resign there.
Yeah,
But
nobody really, there wasn't a lot of movement. I mean, other than obviously Marner going to Vegas. Okay. We knew he was out of Toronto anyways, so that wasn't even but everybody else seemed to sign, like the guys in Florida. I mean, Ekblad signed in Florida. I mean, it's, Marchand, they signed everybody. And Ekblad he took an incredibly team friendly deal to stay in Florida. I mean, because I think he could have got way more on the free market. But because that's a guy I would have liked to have. I think that if you're looking on the D side, that's a guy that I genuinely take a run at because he's big, he's physical, he's nasty. he just adds that part of our defensive game that we don't have. And but who knows? I mean, he just must love Florida. I mean, so
Yes, that, and I mean the big team that was going to offer him a boatload, and they kind of came out and said they were going to offer him a boatload, was Toronto, and they were going to offer him $10 million. But at $10 million, he's only making $5 million. Where he signed a $5.6 million deal in Florida, he's making more money than he would in Toronto.
yeah,
So
but I think we would have gone 7 or 8 with him, honestly.
At least
I
I
mean-
think you go 9+.
So I mean, I get
not
the whole tax thing. I get all that, but he he still took a way team friendly deal from what he could have gotten somewhere else. Even outside of all of that stuff. From the tax side of it.
100%. But
yeah.
if I ask you in free agency, do you want to leave the defending back-to-back Stanley Cup champions
No,
who
I
just
agree.
re-sign their 2 players? I'm like, no, I'm all set. Whatever contract
no,
you can
I
give me,
agree.
give it to me. Yeah.
I agree, but at some point, we all know this, that at some point that the mojo is going to start wearing out. It's going to linger. You're going to get that whiplash effect to where it's almost like you're overconfident,
I
or
hope.
but no, I agree. I think it's going to happen. I think that's the thing that we're going to see out of Florida. I think they're built to repeat next year. I think they're built that way. I think they've signed everybody they need to. They've got the right pieces still in place. But I just think there's got to be a point where, where they're talking dynasty. I mean, I mean, they're built to win it again next year. Let's just put that out there. But everybody's got to, play within themselves and play together like they did. And at some point, there's going to be a crack somewhere, and then Bob's got to play the way he's been playing. I mean, that's my we
were talking about with the what's going to be the crack that finally breaks them.
Yeah.
If Bob goes down, or when Bob decides to hang him up, that's the end of the dynasty.
It is.
That's it.
Yeah. So
because they don't have any goalies in the pipe that are even close to Bob's level at this point.
Nope.
They did have one in Stolarz. They let him go. They also
I don't
had
think
one
Stolarz is at Bob's level. I think the closest
I think he was the closest.
I think he was as close as they had.
I think
that's what I'm trying to say, is he was the closest they had. I'm not saying he's on the same level, but I'm saying you give him a couple more years in the Florida system, I think he would have ended up becoming a solid goaltender for them. Obviously, he left. They don't. That's the one area that they're really going to struggle with, is the goaltending. And then they got rid of as well. Who did they trade to Chicago for?
That's
Seth
who I
Jones?
was gonna. Spencer Knight was the closest they had to
Spencer Knight.
Sergei
Well, you think about
Bobrovsky.
that would have been the tandem they had, Stolarz and Knight. You imagine that tandem, in 3-4 years from now, and in Florida, that would have been you talk about a longevity. But again, they do that. They probably can't sign either Bennett or Ekblad or, so you either, take the red or the blue pill on that one, I think. But overall, that would be, I agree. I think there's going to be something that cracks them.
Yeah.
I think the crack is going to be Bob's 36 years old.
Yeah.
37.
He's 37. He's got a couple more years left, I think. I think goalies are probably the only position where you have that longevity, because you're not taking that abuse, the hitting and the physicality of the game as much. I still think he's probably got 2 or 3 good years left.
Yeah.
And I think he has at least one more like Vezina year in him. I think one. That's about it.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
Well, he's a UFA after this season as well, too.
yeah. No,
That is true. Yeah.
He'll
He'll take a sweetheart deal.
The cap's going to
He's
go
gonna
up.
make $5 million next year.
He is going to make like 4. Yeah, I 100% agree.
He's made
gonna
10
take
million.
that
He's
sweetheart
made
deal,
70
too.
million in the past 7 years. Yeah, he's gonna take a team friendly.
He's going to
deal.
take it. To not leave.
He's not going to leave. He's going to stay there. He's not going to go somewhere else. In the twilight of his career, he's settled. He's probably got a wicked nice home in South Florida, and he doesn't want to pick up and move everything. So, and I don't blame him.
I agree.
It kind of goes
I
back
don't
to the
blame him
Corey
either.
Perry thing, and I was looking up his stats, and he's going to LA because he's 40 years old, and this is he's probably 1 year removed from being retired. So why the hell would I want to travel all over the country when I could go play for
I
LA?
agree.
They're legit.
They're a good team still.
They're a
yeah.
good team.
I think they're
they
less legit now than they were before this year or
yeah.
before the
So
offseason. They added just age.
For
That
sure.
was the problem that I struggled with them
yeah,
is like
And they
were already
re-signed a bunch of. Yeah, they didn't
they were
re-sign. I mean,
already a
they
slow
overpaid for
team.
a ton of free agents.
Yeah, they
Yeah,
were already a slow team, and they just add more slow player. Like Cody
yeah.
Cece, that signing makes zero sense. Like, why you're adding a 32-year-old
well, they have to
aging
replace.
defenseman?
Yeah, but they have to replace that big defensive defenseman that ended up signing with New York.
Gavrikov, yeah, but Cody Cece's not a
Mhm.
defensive defenseman. That's the problem. Is that you replaced it with you put a square tube into a round box. Like that's not going to work. I don't like any of the moves LA made. I think they're probably the biggest losers of the free agency. A couple other real quick before we completely hop off the Canes and kind of go a little bit around the leagues. I would like to touch on a couple signings. Carolina also signs Mike Riley to a 1-year contract. Great depth defenseman. He's probably going to
Don't
be a
hate that. Yeah.
number 7 guy. He can also run a power play if needed. So we add another piece like
Yeah.
that, which also makes me think that there's a little bit more wiggle room to allow Ghost to move on because we do have a depth power play guy. I think we have guys on the team currently that can run a power play, i.e. Alexander Nikishin, i.e. I think Keandre Miller could honestly do it as well too. And I think that
Mhm.
I think so too.
that would be a very good like turning point for him because it's just going to allow him to be a lot more offensive. So I think that's a great signing by Carolina there, especially at the number. It was like 1.5 million for Mike Riley, which
Mhm.
is that's perfect. Carolina
Yeah.
also extends Tyson Yost, another depth piece. I love that
Oh
ad.
yeah, I
Yost
do.
was great for us last year. He's tough. He can play a physical, mean game if needed. He's a depth guy who, if when he comes into the lineup, he's going to give you absolutely everything he
Very
has
good. Yeah.
and nothing less than that. And then we also signed Caden Primo to a 1-year contract. Very IE of a Spencer Martin signing. We know we're going to have some injury troubles at some point this year in the
Mhm.
net. It happens every single year. So you add a piece that I think is way better than a Spencer Martin, and this is no slack on
Yeah.
Spencer Martin. I think he's a good goaltender. But Caden Primo had the best numbers in the AHL last year. Like
He did. Yeah.
he's right on the edge of
And we
being
got him for a bag of pucks.
got him for nothing.
Got him for a
Basically,
seventh round pick.
pick.
And he's
Yeah.
big too. He's 6'3". I mean, 6'3".
Yeah,
He
I
went
know.
22. Was it
Kochetkov
21?
size.
21, 2, and 3 last year. Over under a two goals against and 927 save percentage. I mean,
He
he
might be
won.
the guy.
He's
You know.
he's really, again. How does that translate to an NHL? Regular shift. Who knows? But man, he's
Didn't he
doing
play
everything he
in-
needs to in the American League. So, we'll see.
Didn't he play in playoffs for Montreal last year when Montembeault went down? Didn't he play?
No,
I thought he played against Washington in the first round.
No, it was that.
No,
Was
it
that
was
other guy?
Dawes kid, Nigel
Yeah.
Dawes. I want to say is the kid's name.
Oh, was
Who?
it Nico Dawes?
It's something like
Maybe
that.
it's
Something
Nico, yeah.
Dawes. Something Dawes, but I know Dawes was the goalie that went in. I can look it up real quick.
He must have been the backup.
Yeah, Nico Dawes.
When he
Yeah.
got hurt.
No, that's not. No, hold on.
Because I thought Nico Dawes was in the Jersey
not-
organization.
It is, and he's a goalie. Who is Montreal's?
I could have sworn it was Caden Primo. Maybe not. Maybe I'm wrong.
I know it wasn't Primo. It's some Czech goalie. He's wicked young.
That's right. Yeah, it was the Czech goalie. You're right. I know exactly what you're talking about now.
But
I forgot about that.
one signing I do want to talk about, two signings. Brent Burns going to Colorado. That's a bit of an interesting one. I granted, I think
I like it for Colorado.
I do too, and I think Colorado is going to utilize him in way more of the facet of what he needs to be
They're
versus
gonna be able
what
to, yeah.
Carolina was. He's going to
Yep.
get 12 to 15 minutes a night at the absolute max. He's going to play second, third D pairing minutes, and that's going to
Third,
be
for sure.
perfect for what Burns is. And on top of that, I think he fits their system really well. Where it's a lot, they're very similar to Carolina in the sense that they do funnel a lot of pucks to the net. It's not quite to the extreme that Carolina is, but they got guys that are really good net front. I mean, you talk about putting Nichushkin net front with Burnsy putting it on net. He's going to score a bunch more goals just because of that. So I really like the signing, and especially at the number. I think he signed for $1 million. It's like next to nothing.
Yeah, with some I guess some incentives in there, so he could make
Bonus,
up to
yeah.
$3.5 million or something, depending on how they do. And
Jakob Dobis is the goalie's name. That
Yeah,
player.
that's it.
That's
Yep.
what it was.
Dobis.
Yeah.
Yep. So that was who they had playing in net. And that's the other thing with Montreal is they got a plethora of, I mean, they have Jacob Fowler
got
as
a lot
well
of good
too,
goalies.
who is arguably going to be a number one as well. So they got a plethora of goaltending up in Montreal, which is, I think, half of the reason why Samuel Montembeau, or not Montembeau, but Caden Primo was so easy to move off of from them, because they just don't necessarily need them. You know, they don't need that extra piece because they have so much in the system already. But yeah, so just to clear that up, and then the final signing, I will get the guy's name, but we sign a Russian goaltender from the KHL as well too, who had really good numbers as
He had the
well.
best numbers in the KHL last year. Yeah.
Yep. And funny enough, he's Andrei Svechnikov's best friend, so might be a really good ad for
Yeah.
us. I'm interested to see how much ice time he gets or what the situation is, because he's a 25-year-old goalie. I don't necessarily think he needs any more conditioning in the AHL. So is he going to start in the AHL? Are we moving off of a goaltender? That signing really made me feel like that they're going to move away
that's the
from
1-2.
Kochetkov.
Because we didn't re-sign Tokarski or Martin, so they needed goaltenders down in the A. So they got 2 goalies for the A.
That's the thing that I'm getting at is this an AHL goaltender? No, I don't think so, because he was already in the second best league in the world, lighting the numbers on fire. So is that the AHL?
I think it's a backup replacement for when I believe they're probably hoping that they can still give the reins to Kochetkov at some point, and he would be the backup. He'd be the 1A or 1B. I think they want that Russian tandem. I really do.
I do too.
Yeah, so
that's what I think they're going for.
The goalie's name is Amir Miftafkov. I butchered the shit out of that.
It's Miftakov.
Mitakov. But yeah, best numbers in the KHL. So again, when I saw that signing, immediately my first thought was we're moving off of Kochetkov. We just re-signed Freddie Anderson. Again, to me, you don't sign a goalie to put him into a lesser league. If we were going to be like, hey, we'll take your rights. I don't know how this all works in the KHL too, but like if we could sign his rights and then have him, if he's not the guy this year, have him play in the KHL, put him back on loan out to the KHL and have him play another season out there, because that's better competition in my opinion than the American Hockey League is. So
yeah, it's his second stint in America too, because he played in the American League prior, I think, to 20 or 21 season, or 21-22 season. So he's been here before. Played the American League, the East Coast League, and then went back to the KHL. So the only knock on him is he's a little bit undersized. I mean, he's 6 foot.
I think he's 6'3", no?
No, he's 6 foot. This guy is 6 foot. So that's the only knock on him right now that anybody that I've read has. But again, I don't care. As long as you're producing the numbers, I don't give a shit how tall you are.
Yeah, I don't care how big or small.
And how big you are. But when you look at it just in a vacuum, that's really the only, if you want to call it a negative, that's the only negative they have on him at the moment is just his height. So, but no, if you produce the numbers, I don't give a shit how tall you are. So
yeah, I mean, look at Igor Shesterkin. He's only 6'1", and this goalie.
No,
is
I know, I get it. I do.
No, I know.
I do, yeah. So.
And I think we're also too. I think for me personally, I think we're missing also the most important signing that we made, which is extending Logan Stankoven 8 years, $6 million a year.
Yes.
That is, to me, I love Ehlers, but we know what Stankoven is going to be, and locking him up for 8 years at $6 million,
6.5, I think. Or is it 6 flat?
Like, people are talking about his agent. They need to take his agent out back or something. Like he needs to fire him. That is crazy. He should be making, I think, at least Jarvis contract. I think, realistically, we've seen him. He's a playoff producer.
Yeah,
he had the most goals, I think, for the Canes not the most goals, sorry, but he was up there. He was like top 3. He had 5 or 6, I think. He had 2 in the Eastern Conference Final when nobody else could seem to find the back of the net. So, it's a great signing.
I agree. Here's another guy that wants to be here, and I think I think when you look at it from that standpoint, Carolina threw a number at him, and I think he had in his mind, as long as it's north of this number, I don't give a shit what anybody else tells me. this is where I
Yeah.
want to be. This is where I'm going to stay. I love the system. He obviously came right in. He fit like an absolute glove and never missed a beat. You know, a lot of times takes guys, a handful of weeks to get used to a system. It was like seamless for him. And I completely. I can't believe we haven't mentioned it until now,
I
though,
know.
Cam. But yeah, that was absolute steel. And I think to have him locked up for 6 years,
8.
8 years at six
Yeah.
million or 6.5 million, that's an
We had him till
absolute
he's
8
steal.
30
years,
years
6
old
million.
at six
Yep.
whatever
That's
million.
that's an absolute steal.
I think so too. I think it's the biggest steal. The biggest steal of outside of the Florida signings. I think that's the one for the Canes for sure.
I'll get his exact. 6 million flat for the next 8 years. And then he gets a modified no move clause at the 2030 year, and it's a 10-team no move clause. I don't think we're moving off of
Yeah.
him, but all of a
Yeah.
sudden he becomes a massive asset in that regard because of the contract that he is on. That if there ever is
Yeah.
a
Yep.
need to where we can go out and get a bigger piece, he's not like at that number. I genuinely think he's going to be a point per game player, if not better. Now,
I think so
granted,
too.
he has to get to that level. The big thing that worries me is his under the hood stats. He's in the 1 percentile for finishing, which is not great. You want to be in the 99 kind of percentile. So the fact that he still has that number, if he can add that asset to his game and become a better finisher, and maybe he's not like the guy that's the goal scorer, but putting him on a line with maybe Aho and
Mhm.
Ehlers, all of a
Mhm.
sudden he's dishing the puck over to Ehlers, and Ehlers is a guy that is a bona fide goal scorer. That's the
I
biggest
think
thing
you
that I
try him
think
at center, man.
I do too.
I
I'm
think you
not
try it second line center. If you're not
no.
going to put Jarvis there, I'd put him there. He's
The
played center
only
his whole career,
yeah,
like his whole life. He's played center.
only problem is that when you get to the third round against Florida, and you have the second line center of Sam Bennett versus Logan Stankoven, when you're giving up a lot of size, and that
Not
is a
real. I mean, Bennett's what 5'10".
no.
He's
Bennett's
not
like
like
6'2",
6'4".
I want to say.
No, he's like 6
I'll
foot at
look right
most.
now. Hold on. But anyways, I mean Logan Stankoven is 5'8", if that.
Yeah. But Stanko is a fire plug. I mean,
Yeah,
he's
So
probably as
lower to the
strong as they
ice.
get. So I wouldn't have any heartburn against putting him up against Bennett, toe for toe.
Bennett's listed at 6'1", 194, which he's not 194. He's bigger than
6'1".
that,
Okay.
Yeah.
but that's the only thing where it's like, okay, well, if it's not Sam Bennett, then you're gonna get the matchup of what's the Alexander Barkov, 6'5",
Yeah.
like unit. So like,
That's line one, yeah.
but
Or
that's
yeah, if he bumps down the line too.
yeah,
But yeah, I
in
know
the
what you mean.
playoffs, you're gonna have to deal with
Lundell.
Lundell, another guy, 6'2". Like they're big,
Yeah,
and
he's a big dude.
that's the only part of it where it's like it's a little nervous for me of him playing at the middle role is how small he is. But he's a firecracker. He's a guy that's not
Mhm.
afraid to hit. He's a guy that's not afraid to get his nose dirty. I think he would
Mhm.
do a great job at it. It just makes me nervous when it comes to playoffs because at
Yeah.
the end of the day, having big centers is a massive help. And I think we're in a good direction with KK, Jordan Stahl, with, I mean,
agree.
Aho's not the biggest guy in the world, but if we can add another piece, I think adding another piece is way more beneficial than getting rid of a piece. Other thing to fully go back to your point, Dad, way earlier, the Jason Robertson, Mason McTavish deal, Dallas is not looking to take on anything more than an ELC contract right now. So with
Mhm.
Mason
Yeah, they
McTavish
can't.
needing to sign a new deal in order to
Yeah.
even play next season, he's gonna want $6.5–7 million, which is what Jason Robertson's currently making right now. So they're not
Mhm.
gonna move off of Jason Robertson just to bring in another contract when they need to free up cap space in order to get
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
team under wraps. And so they want to completely dish off Jason Robertson without really taking on anything of a contract. I think I don't think that deal is even maybe there's been some conversations about it possibly, but I don't think it's like a deal that's really even in the works because of
Mhm.
that asset or because of that
Yeah.
aspect. One guy that and I guess we can kind of wrap on this one. One guy that I think could be out for Carolina is Jackson Blake. And
I
I
think so
kind of
too.
want to get your guys' thoughts on that. is Jackson Blake a guy you're willing to move off of right away in order to get a second line center? Because that's going to be one of those pieces, either him or Nadeau. But I think the going rate right now is more Blake than Nadeau
Yeah.
because Carolina needs the goal scoring, and we think Nadeau has more of that than Blake does. Would you guys be okay moving off from Blake now that Stankoven is signed to that contract that he
Yep.
is? Because they're very similar players.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think so. I think, I hate to say it out loud, but because I love Jackson Blake as a player. I think he fits our system. He's a Carolina Hurricane. Everything about him fits what we do. But since they signed Stankoven to that deal, I mean they're very similar players. He becomes expendable. I think, and I hate to say it, I think it showed in the playoffs a little bit where his inexperience, his size, they're the same age basically. But Stankoven I think he was a better playoff player than Jackson Blake was.
Right
Top
now,
to
yeah.
right now, top to bottom, because he's got a little bit more experience. I'm gonna give Blake a lot of rope
I was
here.
gonna give you a counterpoint. Stankoven did go through a playoffs before
Yeah,
his rookie season, so that
yeah,
does help significantly. So
oh yeah,
that's the
no
only
doubt.
thing I want to give Blake credit for is that he
Yeah,
had never experienced playoffs before.
but I think the depth on the wing side by signing Ehlers, I mean, we definitely free up our ability to potentially move off a guy like Jackson Blake or Cam and I mentioned yesterday, even Will Carrier. I mean, you got guys on the wing that you got some value right now that can allow you to get that 2C if we're truly going to look for one, if we believe KK is not the guy. And so I hate to say it because like I said, I'd love to see him in a Carolina Hurricane jersey for a long time, but I just think he's going to be one of the guys that's going to be moving on if we are able to put a deal together for a 2C.
He's a value add. Yeah, I
Yep.
mean, just because of how well he played in the
And he's
regular
on an
season,
ELC
and
right now, so I
he
mean,
is. Well, you have to look at that too. Like him and Nikishin's also on an entry level still. So how I think he's on year 2, obviously, because we burned 1 year
yeah,
by having him
he's got a
play.
little
I
more
think
money.
he
A little more money. It's like a 1.5 million, I think, or 1.2
so
or something like that.
Jackson Blake is going into his third year of his ELC. So this will be
Hmm.
his final year at that number, which is 905. So again, for a team like Dallas with the salary cap
Yep.
going up next season as well too, it makes a whole lot more sense for them to get a guy that they can use next season and then sign a little bit longer term past that point because they're going to have a little bit more wiggle room to play with next year. The issue is
Sure.
this year they just don't have enough guys to even fill a roster because I think they're only on 18
Yeah.
guys signed currently, and they
Yeah.
have all their money spent.
They have
So
no cap
they
left.
got no
Yeah.
cap. They got to get rid of somebody in order to even fill out the rest of the lineup,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
I'm happy Carolina's not in that same boat. Let me just tell you that for
Yeah.
free.
Yeah. The Wizard is that he's doing his job, man. I tell you what,
Yep.
we were all nervous when Waddell left, but I think Tulsky was pulling the strings anyways behind the scenes. It wasn't even. I think Don was just the face man. I think he had some input, but
Well, he was wearing about 5 hats, which is
yeah,
why he probably wanted to move on. He was the president. He was
yeah,
the GM. He was
yeah,
doing a bunch of things. But I agree. I think Tulski's been the GM for at least the last probably 4 years. I would think he's been kind of doing a lot of the legwork and just basically saying to Don like, "Hey, this is what we got. What do you think?" And
yep,
just kind of bouncing his ideas off of him. But
yep.
yeah, I mean, the only other thing I can think of is the only other surprising move, I guess, would be Orlov going to San Jose
Yep.
at 6.5. Which again, San Jose's got to get to the cap floor, so we knew they were going to
Yeah.
throw stupid money at
I
someone.
mean, good
that
for
wasn't that
Orlov. I
great.
mean,
Yeah,
get your
fair
money,
play
get
to
paid,
him.
man. Get
Heck
paid when you
yeah,
can. I
dude,
mean,
for sure.
He's
so
gotten two of those contracts where it's just
yeah,
like
I
he's
know.
getting
He's just
like even the
I know.
contract with Carolina, that was just an overpayment to get him into the system.
yeah,
Yeah,
he's got
seven
he's
seven
got a good
five
agent.
was
Let's put it
yeah.
that way. So anyways, all right, man. Well, we're at the 1 hour mark. Last final comments, and then we'll table until probably wait a little bit to come back and talk about some of our draft picks. Because man, we got some big size guys in the pipeline now. Coming in the next handful of years. So we'll talk about them later. But
Yeah.
final shift for you guys.
Let's do well to wrap it, let's do biggest winner and biggest loser of the free agency so far. So I already have my two teams kind of lined up as far as biggest winner, biggest loser. So I'll just I guess I'll get it started. Biggest loser, LA Kings by a country mile.
Yeah.
I think that they got older, they got slower, and against I mean, you look at what killed them in playoffs against Edmonton for the past 4 straight seasons is they could not keep up with the speed. And your idea of keeping up with the speed is going to get older and slower on the back end.
Yeah.
Not going to help. It's not going to
Yeah.
get in. It's not going to help anyway whatsoever. So I
Yeah.
just I don't get half of the signings that they put together. You mean add a 40-year-old Corey Perry? Is he going to move the needle for you? No, not really. You add Cody Ceci. Is he moving the needle for you? No, not really. You're just adding Edmonton's X's and or hoping that you can beat them at some point. But the thing you don't have
Hmm.
is the two-headed monster that Edmonton does have, which is
Yeah.
McDavid and Draisaitl. So I don't like any of the moves LA made. Now, granted, they could prove me completely wrong, but I just to me it was like, what are you guys? I would have rather them utilize more prospects next season, kept their cap space until next year when maybe there's a bigger move to be made.
Yeah.
But I just don't like much of what LA did. I think biggest winners this offseason, and I'm probably going to steal some of your guys's, so I'm sorry. That's why I wanted to go first. Florida Panthers.
Yeah.
How in the hell do you win the cup and then keep the entire lineup together? How
Hmm.
did nobody leave? Like, yeah, they didn't add any pieces. They went out, they got a goaltender, they got a backup. That was really the extent of what they really did in the offseason. But the only guy you lost was Nate Schmidt. Like, come on. How do you only lose one guy? It just
Yeah.
blows my mind. So, biggest
Mhm.
winners to them, they keep Marchand, but the Marchand contract is 6-year contract at 37 years old. He's going to be 43 before that thing expires. That's going to be crazy. He's
Hmm.
not going to play that contract out. So that's actually going to hurt them in a little bit, but will hopefully hurt them at some point. But I mean, to
Yeah.
keep Sam Bennett at 8 million, great contract. To keep Ekblad
Yeah.
at 5, whatever he's making, unbelievable contract. I don't know how they did it, but I mean, Zito is a wizard. I
Yeah.
applaud it. I don't think he really had much to do. I think it was more the guys were all on vacation
Yeah.
together and they're all hammered and like, let's fucking run it back.
Let's
Whatever
do it
contract
again.
you guys
Yeah.
can get, let's run it
Yeah.
back. So,
Yeah.
I think they're the
I'll say Carol. I say Florida. I wouldn't say that the biggest winner in free agency. I'll say because they signed everybody before free agency. So I'll say the big.
so did most teams.
I know,
Yeah.
but again, that's why I think one of the biggest. I think the biggest. I'll say loser because they didn't do anything per se of any significance. I think it's Toronto. I think they didn't do anything. They really didn't get. They lost Marner. I think he was going anyways, but I agree with you. LA's gotten older. They got slower. So but I think from the standpoint of not doing anything and putting yourself in the ability, the category to be a cup contender, you had to do something. And whether they have cap space or not, I don't know, but they didn't. They literally didn't do anything. So for them, it's for that it's me. For me, it's them on the loser side. And I think Carolina won the free agency. I think they got way better. They didn't sign Keandre Miller's not a free agent, but he was a trade. But I think post free agency, we, in my opinion, got way better. I agree, Florida. But for the most part, everybody else, I don't think really did much in the way of bolstering their rosters to get better.
Yeah.
The ones that made the most probably had the most activity were probably, was us and maybe the Rangers and a handful of other teams. But I just think we, for me, we got a B plus, if not an A minus on post free agency.
Yeah, my for worst for me is kind of a tie. One is because the team didn't do anything. The other team is because of what they lost. So for me, Edmonton's a huge loser. A huge loser. They lost a bunch of really key guys that helped them get to the cup final again, and they just put more of a bag on McDavid and Draisaitl. They didn't fix their goaltending as of yet, which has been an issue for them for years. They still haven't fixed it. Hopefully good for the Canes, because I think that means McDavid's probably going to leave at some point. He's not
Stu
going to
Skinner
want to
wants
resign
out
there.
too, so they don't even have a goalie that wants to
Like
be
I said, train wreck. They don't have much cap space. They're in a heap of trouble. I would be shocked if they make the playoffs this year. That's my hot take right now. But the only other team is Chicago. Chicago did absolutely nothing to get better. They did nothing. They weren't sellers. They weren't buyers. They kind of just standing still and it's like, well, I hope, standing on the train tracks hoping the train doesn't hit them. It's like, well, okay, man, at some point, somebody's going to leave of significance, whether it's Bedard that wants out, whether it's, whoever. So I think that was another big loser for me. I mean, I think realistically looking at it, winner-wise, I mean, I think that, as much as I hate to say this, I think the Rangers did pretty well. I don't think they did bad. They got a lot from the Keandre Miller trade, which is good. They signed a really good defenseman. They got a couple of good depth guys as well. They basically have changed the whole DNA of the team, which is what needed to happen after the whole Barclay Goodrow fiasco last summer. They basically had to, as soon as Drury did that, he knew, he's like, all right, I got to completely revamp this team after this because nobody's going to like me after it. So we'll see what other tricks he has up his sleeve. As much as I as much as I hate giving Rangers fans and the Rangers organization credit for anything, I think they did pretty well as far as setting themselves up to have a better year than they did last year. Yeah. So I think for me, they're up there. I think Montreal got significantly better as well. They're probably my 1A or my 1B. I think Noah Dobson's going to be really good. They kind of pushed the chips in here on Lane Hudson. They really think he's the number one guy, so they wanted to get him a long-term partner.
I don't think Dobson is going to play with Lane Hudson. That would be an absolute train wreck in the D zone. Let me just preface that. I think they're going to be split up.
I would be surprised if they don't try and develop Dobson to be his partner. That's what I'm trying to say. Is they made a big commitment to him. It'd be really surprising if he doesn't play first line minutes. That's all I'm going to say.
Yep.
But I don't disagree.
Those are my. I know we've only picked one, but I picked those two for sure.
Well,
I think.
Just because I thought one of you guys was going to take it, I want to add one more team to my biggest loser category. And I got to say this with a big grain of salt, but the Boston Bruins did not do very well in free agency. I think they drafted extremely well. I think the fact that Hagens fell to them as late as they did, I thought he was a top 3 overall pick. I think Hagens is going to be a massive asset for them going forward, and he's going to be the number 1 center here very shortly. But yeah, this is where it's like you take one step in a good direction and then you take 2 steps backwards, because you couldn't offer Brad Marchand a $5.5 to $6 million a year contract, but yet you go out and you get Tanner Jeannot for a 5-year deal at $3.4 million, a guy that averaged 8 points last season.
Yeah.
He's a fighter.
Third or fourth.
You gave him almost $4 million for a fighter. That's asinine. And then they go out add Sean Corrali for $1.85 million for 2 years. Those 2 guys' contracts combined would equal probably what Marchand would have wanted or asked for in Boston. So how do you not go and re-sign your captain? You trade him away to a division rival. You make them absolutely better. And then you don't try and just sell the farm to rebuild. No, you go out and you're like, we want to win now. Well, you don't, because you're adding crap pieces to a crap
you're not
lineup.
adding any value.
You're not adding anything of value. So it's like I'm because I live here, I understand how angry a lot of these people are. They cannot stand whoever I forget the GM's name, but
Sweeney.
Yeah, Don Sweeney. They can't.
Don Sweeney.
Him.
Yeah, he's
horrible.
You want to talk about Kevin Adams in Buffalo? Don Sweeney needs to be gone in Buffalo or Boston. He is not doing he's not doing the Boston Bruins any favors, quite honestly.
No. And the problem is if they keep being this bad, their top guys are going to want to be out. Like Swayman's going to want to get out. Pasta's going to want to get out. Like Pasta, at some point Pasta's going to want to win a cup, right? Like I know he's making over $11 million a year, but still, I don't disagree. I think the contracts, they're kind of in that same boat as LA. They just, they kind of put the chips in on the free agents and just threw a lot of money at some really mediocre players. So
the Tanner Jeannot one is so crazy to me because the guy is not good. Like not good. But he's not a $3.4 million. He's making more than Martin. He's
Yeah,
making
no,
more
he's
than
not.
Martinook.
Yeah, the guy I think they signed Morgan Geekie to a deal this
The
off
Morgan
season.
Geekie
So
was a good deal.
contract is nice.
that was a good signing.
Yes.
So he that's I never thought about the Bruins, but maybe we go after a guy like Pavel Zacha. We're looking for a
Yeah.
centerman, maybe a second line.
No,
Zaka maybe.
So
I'm all set with that
again,
Maybe
one.
Elias Lindholm if he's unhappy. Try and bring him
yeah,
back.
Elias Lindholm, he could play at the middle of the ice. So
Not at the number.
Crazy how
I'm
much center
sorry.
depth the Canes used to have
I
Yeah.
know.
that they don't anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm
so-
not at 7.75 million for me for Elias Lindholm. I don't think
Yeah, I
he's worth
know.
that amount, especially because he signed for the next 5 seasons. I'm all set
Yeah.
with that.
Yeah.
I did also forget to add, they did add Victor Arvidsson as well too. They got him for next to nothing as well. Another halfway decent pickup if he can meet the play that he was at before he went to Edmonton. Because
Yeah.
that was where his career kind of went downhill when he moved to Edmonton. He got
Mm-hmm.
scratched the entire finals basically.
Yeah.
Again,
Mm-hmm.
I think if they can get Arvidsson back to where Arvidsson was when he was in, I think it was LA and
was in-
Winnipeg, like those 2 seasons.
I think he played in Nashville too. Yeah.
Yeah, he's played in quite a few places.
Played in a
I
number
can't-
of locations. Let's leave it
Yeah.
at that. Leave it at that. So
And then other final deal with them that I really liked, they got Mason Lohrei for 3.2 million for the next 2 seasons. I think
that was
Mason
nice.
Lohrei is
Needed
going to be a
him.
very good
He's gonna be
defenseman.
really good.
It's a bridge deal, but the fact that you're able to lock him up at that number for how cheap as it was,
Yep.
I think that's a really good pickup. So
yeah.
Sweeney has done good, but man, those free agents just like they take 3 steps backwards because
Yeah.
Tanner Jeannot's making more than Mason Lohrei. Like
know.
let that sink in.
Yeah, I know.
That's
I
crazy.
know.
Yeah, but again, it's one of those where beggars can't be choosers. You take what you can get, I
Yeah,
guess.
what's
and that's
left,
what they feel like. They're kind of picking up the pieces because they knew they probably weren't in on Ehlers. They knew they weren't in. And they didn't have a ton of cap space either, and they needed to fill out a lot of roster spots. So, which I'm surprised they picked up as many guys as they did with getting James Higgins, and they knew they had him too, and he's probably going to play. So, I don't know. Yeah, they didn't do great. I mean, there's a lot of teams that did pretty poor stuff. There's a lot of, I wouldn't say anybody was like an out for me at least. Like that was a clear cut. Like how last year everybody was like Nashville's the winner. Like they won free agency. Well, obviously that didn't work out for them, but there's no clear cut winner this year. I don't think for like who won free agency in general. Who signed the best free agents? I mean,
Yeah.
I guess you could say Carolina. That's about it.
I'd argue, and I know it's not technically free agency, but it really sort of is. I'd argue Vegas is a big winner in this free agency because they add Mitch Marner for a longer term contract without really having to give up much. I mean, they gave up Nick Waugh,
they gave up
which,
Waugh.
in my opinion, this
the tampering
will
allegation along that,
actually
too.
be the final point that I have, and then I'll shut up for the rest of the day. I know, Dad, you said Toronto didn't do anything. I'd argue they were the team that really didn't want to do anything, seeing as they were the only team that really gave Florida any bit of a fight. I mean, they took them 7 games, and in reality, that series could have. I mean, they were up 2-0 in the series, and they were up 4-1 in Game 3. Like that series could have been over if Florida
then
or
Florida
Toronto was
decided to
able
play, though.
to finalize that thing. But like I said, I think that outside of yes, I think they probably still could use some goaltending help. I don't think they needed to change too much. Now, granted, you lose Mitch Marner, but I think that that's actually going to be a net positive for Toronto because you then it's not so much money going to one guy. So
Yeah.
I still think Toronto does well in the offseason, especially because they add another big centerman as well. Like Nick Waugh, he's been very good, and he's another Canes prospect, but he is very, very, very good. So I think that they, yes, lose a big name guy for the regular season, but in reality, is Mitch Marner giving you much in the playoffs? Not really. So it'd be interesting to see what he does out in the West with, I'm assuming he's going to play with Jack Eichel and whoever else, but
Yeah, he'll play first line.
Yeah.
But,
So,
all right, that is my actual final point.
all right.
I got nothing else.
Good. Well, we're not off air just yet, so that things could change in the next 35 seconds. So, but anyways, all right. Well, we'll wrap there, and won't let Kyle talk anymore. So I'm just kidding. But we do appreciate you guys hanging in there with us. We'll gather again here in Now, in a couple of weeks or so, we'll talk a little bit on the draft picks and what we think's in the pipeline for the Hurricanes, and maybe between now and then we'll have solidified a 2C spot or not, and then kind of have a look at what the opening lineup's going to look like for the Hurricanes, to talk a little bit more about that. So until then, thanks for Cam, Colin, and myself. We'll talk to you next time.